Good evening, everybody. We are super excited to have you tonight. My name is Madeline Cano. I am the Assistant Director of Diversity, Inclusion, and Access with the Office of Admissions at Simpson College. My colleague, Emily Radke, the Assistant Director of Admissions, is also on the call. She will be monitoring the chat. So if you've got any kind of questions, you can interact with her in the chat box. Tonight, we have a full plate of content to cover, and I hope that you all are fully prepared. We want to make sure that we can help you all make college as affordable as possible. And honestly, there's always every year a lot of money that gets left on the table. So we want to make sure that you have access to everything possible, regardless of what institution you decide to attend. So tonight we're going to be covering how to maximize college scholarship opportunities, whether it is through Simpson College or through private resources. We're going to cover all of those basics. So I want to kick things off with just some common terminology. A lot of times, if you were a first generation college student like me and you're looking at the process, it can be really daunting. Unfortunately, sometimes in academia, there's a lot of jargon and words that it's like, what is this even? What is this? Like, I don't even know what this means. Let's simplify this. So we're going to go through some of the common things that you will see when you're applying for like your financial aid or anything like that. So first, I want to jump into the next slide, which is cost of attendance. So you'll see cost of attendance on most colleges' websites, but it could mean different things for different institutions. It also is referred to as a COA. So when you are looking at a college's website, the cost of attendance typically includes these 5 things. This is definitely the case for Simpson. So what's included in your cost of attendance is tuition and fees, your room and board, which is like your dorm and your meals, books and supplies, anything related to transportation. So if there's like parking included in there, if there is, some of the bigger institutions might have on-campus busing, and then any personal expenses. A lot of times students can get confused and think that, their offers are a full ride when really it just covers tuition, for example. So that's just something to be clear about. When someone says cost of attendance, that is everything included, all encompassing the complete cost to attend an institution. And a lot of times on financial aid awards, you will typically just see tuition and fees and room and board included on your notifications and awards. Sometimes books and supplies, transportation, and personal expenses are not included on those things because they vary based on what you're planning to study, and just, your general expenses. Some of us, are a little bit more thrifty, and some of us like a lavish lifestyle. So there's different strokes for different folks. Just kind of depends on what's best for you. So those are kind of the things you'll see when it comes to the cost of attendance. The next thing I want to chat about is EFC, and this is expected family contribution. I do know that, just like a quick update, that I do believe the federal government is sort of moving away from this. However, for you all who are applying for fall of 2021, you will see this on your awards. And this is a way that admissions teams and institutions are able to determine and measure what is affordable for you. So EFC means expected family contribution, and it is just the formula or measurement of a student's ability or your family's ability to pay for any kind of post-secondary expenses. And the impactful things that you're going to notice in the way that this is calculated is based on your dependency status. So if your parents still claim you on your taxes, you're a dependent. If you are not and you have your own taxes, or maybe you're in foster care or something like that, you would be an independent. It'll be based on your family's income. So we will look at your parents' tax returns from the previous year to determine affordability. And then we'll also look at and see if you have any other siblings that are currently in college, because that obviously is going to impact what your affordability looks like and how much you're going to be able to pay for tuition. And so this formula kind of varies, but in general, what the actual formula is the cost of attendance. So those 5 things, those 5 categories we just talked about, minus your estimated family contribution, which will equal your financial need. So that just tells a college, this is kind of how much this family is going to need in aid from your college in order to support. So your estimated family contribution is more or less what we think what the federal government thinks that your family could pay out of pocket. So financial need is really a lot of what Simpson bases our scholarships off of, besides your academic performance and merit. The second biggest category is financial need. And I would say across the board, most universities use this formula in order to calculate their financial need and provide different scholarship opportunities for folks. Okay. So what I want to chat about really quick now is just general topics. So if you are wondering like, okay, how am I going to pay for college? Where does all this stuff come from? This all will come from these 5 categories right here. So majority of funds come from these 5 categories. You have the federal government, which is through your Fafsa, which is an application that everyone submits in order for institutions to determine their financial need. We aren't really going to cover a whole lot on Fafsa because we've done several presentations on it already during this cycle. However, if you check your chat, Emily's going to drop the YouTube link to our financial aid basics, where our director of financial aid will cover and talk about all the things related to the Fafsa, what it is, why it's important, why you need it, and any just 101 questions on that, because we've already covered that for the past semester. So you can definitely check that out on our YouTube channel. So there is a link in the chat that you'll be able to check out and watch after this presentation. Highly encourage you to check out our YouTube channel, Simpson College in general, just because there's a ton of information on there on different programs, activities, campus life, all that good stuff. Okay, so back to the nitty gritty. Federal government, FAFSA, that's how they determine where you get that funding from. Again, the states also have different funding, which I will cover specifically in this presentation. I am going to focus a lot more on Iowa because our institution is located in Iowa. But if you are located outside of Iowa in any other state, check out your Department of Education website for your state. You will be able to find the same resources available to you as a resident of Arizona, of Texas, of any other state besides Iowa. But for the purposes of this presentation, we will be talking specifically about some Iowa-focused things. And then colleges and universities are definitely going to provide a lot of scholarships. So it might be based on your academic performance. Some colleges are able to give awards based on athletics. And then everything else will be based on financial need. So after that equation, your estimated family income, cost of attendance, and we're able to see what that looks like for your actual attendance and financial need. Private resources, which we'll dig into, those are anything ranging from nonprofits, different organizations, national foundations, to banks, chambers of commerce, those types of things. And then employers. And people always forget about employers, but talk to your parents about where they work. A lot of times there, some big employers and even small employers offer scholarship opportunities for children of people who they employ. So like in Des Moines, for example, there are several big insurance companies, and I know for a fact that Nationwide and Principal do offer scholarship programs for the children of employees who work for them. So just chat with your parents and ask them to inquire about any kind of scholarship opportunities that might be available. Again, a little bit goes a long way, and the more that you can be debt-free, the better. So highly encourage you to chat with your parents about that. Okay. Now we're going to dig into Simpson College's specific scholarship programs. So I'm going to turn it over to Emily, and she is going to cover some of this content.
All right. Hey, everyone. Thank you again for taking the time and joining us tonight just to talk a little bit about really how can we do what the title of this session says, secure the bag. We want to make sure that Simpson is not only the right choice for you in your education, but also it's an affordable one. So the first thing we're going to go over here is just talk a little bit just about some of the specific scholarships and grants that are offered to Simpson students. So since you guys are all admitted, you guys already know every student that is admitted to Simpson will be awarded basically a cumulative high school GPA scholarship. So that's a scholarship that is based on your GPA and your high school GPA, and it is annual. Okay. So basically starting off, if you have at least a 2.8 GPA, you will receive that $22,000 scholarship. And then the higher your GPA, the more money you get. So, this is something to where we really want to make sure that we are awarding students for your hard work during those high school years, and making sure that, again, the Simpson experience is affordable in offering you this early scholarship amount. The other ways are, of course, we do have merit and need-based grants. So, excuse me, merit-based scholarships and need-based grants. So, so students, based on your FAFSA and what the EFC is, then we will be able to provide various different grants. The one that we are most notable for is our Simpson Promise Grant, which we do a lot, which is a full tuition scholarship to students whose families own less than $65,000. So, or excuse me, $60,000. So that is one grant program that we currently do have. We also do have the Simpson Access Grant. That is a full tuition and dollar amount grant for undocumented and DACA students. And then last but not least, additional scholarship opportunities that the college does offer are essentially what we call a special interest scholarship. So as you can see here from this list, these are scholarships that pertain to students that do have a vested interest in one of these programs, whether that be social justice, community service and volunteer work, mock trials, speech and debate, theater, history, etc. We encourage students to not only apply for these additional scholarships from Simpson, but to apply to as many of them as you want. First reason is because these scholarships could add anywhere from $500 to $2,000 to your overall package that you're getting from Simpson. And these are also renewable scholarships. So once you are awarded the scholarship your freshman year, the scholarship will stay with you all 4 years that you are at Simpson. Last but not least about these scholarships, they're stackable. So you can apply for all of them, or you can apply for just 2 of them. It's not a situation to where you can only apply for one and potentially get one. And we encourage all of you, since you are currently admitted, please make sure that you are taking some time going to our website and reviewing these scholarships and reading the requirements, because these scholarships will be due on February 1st. All right. And then the additional scholarships that we do have at Simpson are really in reference to legacy. So if you essentially, if your parent did attend Simpson, then there is a $1,000 scholarship that you can qualify for. If you have a brother or a sister that is currently attending Simpson, that is another opportunity to get a $1,000 scholarship. And then last but not least, if you have a parent that works at one of the other private schools here in Iowa, then you could essentially do tuition exchange, which would essentially cover your cost of tuition. And at that point, you're only paying room, meals, and fees.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily.
Of course.
And she will also, again, there are full details for all of the applications for these scholarships on our website. Emily will put the link in the chat for you. Again, that link that she's about to give you is going to have basic information about financial aid in general. If you just scroll to the bottom, there will be something called other scholarships or other specialty programs, and you will see all of the scholarships that we just listed and the amounts, the ranges for those grants available, as well as the requirements. So please be sure to read through all of those details. There's different requirements, again, for each of those programs. So we just want to make sure that you have everything that's available to you. You've got about 2 weeks to kind of get that stuff together. So please definitely check that out. Okay, we're going to talk now about the different state grants and programs that are available, as well as some private opportunities. So again, like I said earlier, I am focusing some of this stuff on Iowa specific. However, if you come from another state, your state most definitely has similar resources available to you. All you need to do is go to your state's Department of Education website, and they're pretty navigable. They're pretty easy to find, but all of your information will be labeled on there for these different grants. So for the state of Iowa, if you are a resident of a state of Iowa, are graduating from an Iowa high school, these will apply to you. Whether you're a first-year student, or a transfer student, all of these different things apply. There are some specific requirements again for some of these, but just make sure you read the fine print when you're applying and checking them out. You don't want to waste your own time, right? Your time is precious. So make sure that you're reading the fine print. So on the left, you've got need-based state grants. And again, this will all be based off of that very important Fafsa that your parents have turned in. So it's all based on your parents, whether it's a single parent or a 2-parent household. It will be based off of their income and taxes from the previous year. So for example, for this year, we're looking from last year, 2019. So we have the Iowa tuition grant, which is specifically for private schools only. So if you decide to attend Simpson, you would be considered for the Iowa tuition grant. You have the Iowa Vocational Tech grant, as well as the Gpa grant. And these are specific to community college, or if you are planning on going into anything that is related to a trade. So definitely check that out. If, let's just be real, right? Like 4-year institutions are not necessarily for everybody, and that's totally fine. We want to make sure that you're making the right decision for you. So make sure that you check out all of your options, because there are grants available for everybody, whether you choose to do any kind of vocational program, a community college, or go to a 4-year school. Hopefully that 4-year school is Simpson. We have different programs available for youth and students who are in the foster care system or who have been in the foster care system. And then we also have Gear Up. So that's for folks who are actually in the Gear Up program in your high school. And I know Gear Up is definitely across the country. So if you are a Gear Up student, you already know that you're a Gear Up student. If this is the first time you're ever hearing about Gear Up, then these scholarships definitely would not apply to you because you're not currently participating in their programming. So, but if you are a Gear Up student, be sure to check that out. I think that your Gear Up leaders have probably already talked to you about these scholarships, but again, just make sure that you're checking that out. Most of the need-based state grants will automatically apply to your financial aid. So for the most part, you usually don't have to do anything additional. They can kind of see that you're planning on going to a specific school, and they'll be able to apply that to your financial aid package. And they are communicating with our financial aid departments to make that happen. The other aspect is the non-need-based state grants. And these are definitely things that you are going to want to apply for. So for example, if you are interested in participating in the National Guard, there's money available for that. A state fair scholarship from former Governor Terry Branstad, honor scholarship for those who have high achieving academic success. And then Iowa specifically has a teacher shortage forgivable loan program. So we are definitely encouraging people to go into the education field. Iowa public schools need teachers. So there's definitely some money involved there if that's the career path that you want to choose. So again, you can find all of this information on the Department of Education's website for your specific state. So again, if you're not from Iowa, check out your state's specific website. You'll be able to find all this information there. Private resources. This is the part that can get very overwhelming and very confusing. So I want everyone to just kind of like take a deep breath and exhale because there is a lot of money every year left on the table. Each year, just privately, over $1.7 million goes out in scholarships. And that's kind of like on the low end. So there is money to be had and you can get it. And we're going to help you figure out how to do that. So what I mean by private resources, after you've already filled out your Fafsa and you've got your financial need from your college, and now the college has said, okay, this is how much your expected family contribution is. This is how much, your Fafsa tells us that you can afford. And let's just, for fun, say that it's $10,000 per year. That's how much that institution says that you can afford. And you're thinking, okay, how am I going to pay for $10,000 per year, $5,000 per semester? What does that look like for me on a monthly basis? That's a lot of money. Check out a lot of these resources because you're going to be able to cover some of those costs. And with private money, you have more liberty in terms of how you spend it. So you can apply it to tuition. You could apply it to, your books and supplies. You could apply it to really kind of anything that you want. Maybe living, if you're not living on campus, for example, it could be that. So it really just depends. And each of these private scholarships, again, have their own requirements. So read the fine print and read it twice to make sure you understand what the requirements are. So that way you know what's going on. But you're going to see things like foundations. So nationally, this is really common. These big foundations, right? Honestly, like folks like Jeff Bezos and, Bill Gates, like those people are the type of people that have foundations. And you'll find that there's ample money to be had there. Again, it is more competitive because it is on a national basis. And sometimes they tend to be program specific. So, Melinda Gates, for example, has scholarships that are focused on women in STEM, right? So if that applies to you, check it out. So this just takes a little bit more research on your end to kind of figure out what that looks like. Community organizations. This is really good. Again, these are national, statewide, and local. I would say, your chances of getting scholarships from community organizations is going to be higher if they're a locally based organization and if you have volunteered with that organization. So be sure to kind of check that out. Any local businesses, there are tons and tons of local businesses that provide scholarship opportunities for, not only their employees, but just people who live in the community. And typically these scholarships tend to be smaller, but let me tell you, like $100 here and there, it's much better than paying it later. So just get it covered, go after it, apply for it, spend the time and do it. Corporations, like bigger companies, definitely have a lot of those types of things. This is where you might see those employee incentive programs. So if your parents work for Wells Fargo or something like that, then there definitely is probably some scholarship opportunities there. Local chambers of commerce. So chambers of commerce are literally the business leaders of your local town or your county, your community. And almost always the chambers of commerce have different scholarship programs available as well. Churches and other places of worship are really great options too. So if you happen to be a person of faith, check with your local church or your place of worship and see what options they have available. Some of them require you to be a member of that congregation. Some of them don't. So just make sure you're looking into that. Sometimes it's faith-based where maybe you don't attend that specific place of worship, but you are of that specific faith, right? You do, worship in that denomination specifically. So just check that out. And the last place, which people don't think about often, but the place where everyone keeps their money, banks. Banks have a lot to offer, specifically credit unions. So highly, highly, highly recommend, especially right now, if you're working like a part-time job or something, see where you're banking, see what kind of resources they offer. If you are able to open up a bank account, another one with a credit union, I highly recommend, just because they offer, what I've noticed anyway, is that they tend to offer a lot more scholarships, and credit unions want to reinvest locally. So be sure to check those out and make sure that you are able to access all the resources that you can. So those are the general categories. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can find that money, right? Okay. So there are a ton of ways to research it. Like I said, there's literally millions of dollars left on the table each and every year. People getting after it and trying to make sure that they leave college debt-free. That's the goal, right? We don't want you to leave college, with a ton of debt, right? Because we just want you to be able to be as successful as possible when you start your career. So, however, there's a lot of different search engines and ways to find those things that can be sort of overwhelming. So these are my top 3. These are not the only 3 that are available to you out there. And maybe your high school counselor has sort of talked to you about some of these already. There's a variety of different search engines out there. I specifically like these for very particular reasons. So my top one is an app you can download on your phone called Scholly. And this was created a few years ago, actually, by a college student. He was a computer science guy, and he was just having a hard time finding scholarships. He was overwhelmed by the process, and he thought, okay, there has to be like an easier way to organize this. How can I do this? So he literally created an app, and it's almost like a social media platform. You create a profile, and then that profile, based off of your academic profile, your financial need, your personal interests, what you plan to study, where you live, any other identifiers too, if you belong to a specific group of people, you can put all of that in there. And as many details you put in there as possible is better. And then that app will literally pair you with scholarships across the country. And it pairs you based on the likelihood, the percentage in which it thinks that you could probably get this scholarship. So it will pair you with lots of scholarships, but it will rank them in order from you're most likely, if you apply for this, you most likely would be considered for this scholarship. So definitely look into that, download that. Scholarship Owl is another really great one. If you have heard of the Common App, so for folks who are really interested in a ton of schools, you can apply to colleges through the Common App, where you literally type in your information one time and then you send your application off to hundreds of schools. I don't recommend it. I think it's better if you apply specifically to just, through college's own personal applications. However, when it comes to scholarships, that could be really helpful. If you've got too much going on, maybe you're a dual sport athlete or you volunteer a lot and you're just like a really busy student, Scholarship Owl could be really good for you. So it's essentially one application, one-stop shop, and it submits your information to thousands of scholarships based off of what you are interested in. This is focused a little bit more on academics. So again, it will send out your application based on what you think you might study. So if you're a student and you know for sure you're going to go into nursing, or you want to go into physical therapy or, whatever, it will kind of base things off of that. The last one I really like is Scholarship Advisor. And I like this because it has a tracking element to it. So again, this is another, different thing to help you figure things out, to make sure that you are staying on track. It's an extensive database. It's huge. It has thousands and thousands of scholarships. However, when you create your profile, it also tells you where you're at in the process. So let's say you apply to 10 scholarships, it will tell you the date that you applied. It will tell you and track things if you've gotten a response from, said donor. So that's really nice because it formats it for you so that you can kind of keep up and keep track of where you're at, whether you've been awarded or not, and different deadlines that are coming up. So if you star a scholarship but you haven't applied for it yet, it will send you an alert and tell you, hey, that deadline's coming up in 2 weeks and I see you haven't applied yet, but you starred this scholarship. You better make sure that you submit that. So again, these are 3 of my favorites just for efficiency purposes. These are not the only tools and search engines available, but these are the ones that I feel like are the most unique. They're the most user-friendly, and they're the ones that I like the best. Personal preference. Okay, these next things are the big search engine. So it's like the Google of finding scholarships. And you probably have heard of at least one of these for sure. Again, I picked these based on accessibility for people. And I picked them based on familiarity as well. No one likes to log onto a website and just get confused as to what the heck you're supposed to do. So I like these websites the best just because they are, again, very user-friendly. College Board is super, super common. They are by far my favorite website to check out, mainly because they keep it very up to date. So sometimes you'll look at websites and you'll see okay, this hasn't been updated since September. It's January. What's going on here? College Board is not like that. They're on top of their game. They're checking things pretty frequently. I also like that you're able to search by specific qualifiers. So what I mean by that is you can search based on a variety of different criteria. You can search based on academic preferences. You can search based on your particular identity, whether that be gender, any cultural background, religious background, activities, anything that you might have interest in or anything that really applies to you as an individual. You can narrow your search based on that, which is really, really nice because there honestly are scholarships for everybody. And I know that because my brother got the weirdest scholarship when he was applying to school. He is a lefty. He played baseball and he pitches right-handed and left-handed, which is very odd. He got literally a scholarship for being left-handed. I kid you not. So there is money out there available for every single person, which is really great. CapEx is great because this is a very trusted source for people who want to donate. You'll find a lot of corporate scholarships here. There's over $11 billion in scholarships given out annually just from the CapEx platform alone. So again, this is really great looking at, especially if you're thinking of going into an up and coming industry or a really popular industry. And what I mean by that, from what I've seen from the trends, is the healthcare field and STEM. Those are two huge industries that are just growing exponentially, not only in the United States, but globally. And so there are a lot of companies that are investing in students because they're investing in the workforce, potential future employees, which is great. Chegg, you will get more familiar with as you move on in your college search, because Chegg is one of those applications that it's a company that also provides books as well. So you can rent books from Chegg when you get into college, which is really nice. It's a really detailed database. And a lot of times you can search based on if you don't want to complete an essay, because I would say that a majority of scholarships that you're going to be applying for, they're going to require you to complete some sort of essay at some point, but you can narrow it down and you can filter out if you don't have, again, if you don't have the time, you can filter it out and make sure that you are looking at some of the scholarships that don't require any kind of essay. So again, it'll just be looking at strictly your details. So the more details you put in about yourself, such as your academic profile and more of those qualifying identifiers, that will help you. I do think that essays really give you a leg up and tell you a lot more about yourself, which is really about the actual, who you are and what you're looking to do in college. So I highly recommend searching for some of those, but it's kind of nice to not have to constantly just write essays all the time, which is good. Again, these are not just all of the search engines that are out there, but these are the top 3 that I really like, just for, again, being user-friendly and having a vast amount of scholarships available. So when you're looking to search for scholarships, you're really wanting to create a narrow search. So you never just want to log on to Google and type in, okay, scholarships. Where that's going to lead you is down a really big rabbit hole. So you want to be as specific as possible in what you're looking for. So specifically, some things I would recommend checking out is academic programming. So potentially, if you know the area in which you want to focus on, you can narrow your search based on academic programs. You can narrow your search based on location, whether it's where you're from or potentially where you're going, right? So this is, again, really helpful for students who, maybe international students, it's pretty helpful with that. But there's also some other scholarships available based on if you're from a particular region, like the Midwest, the East Coast, West Coast, those types of things. Background and identity, this pool of scholarship money for these qualifying identifiers has grown exponentially over the past decade. So I highly, highly recommend narrowing your search down based on this as well. And these are just a couple examples. This in no way is the limit, right? But these are the common ones that most people tend to search by, which would be race and ethnicity, religion, or if you're a member of the LGBTQ plus community. Again, there are other qualifiers and identifiers available out there, such as just personal interests or hobbies in which you participate in. But you can always search based on this as well, which is really good. And you can combine multiple. So for example, like I said, women in STEM, that's a huge thing. Make sure you kind of check that out as well. And then lastly, life experiences. This is something that you wouldn't think would be applicable to searching for funding. However, depending on, just kind of what your life experiences have been, there are lots of foundations and nonprofits that support people who have come from a variety of different backgrounds. Foster care is a big one that I see a lot. Potentially, if you have refugee status, for example, if you've had any kind of experience related to like political violence or something like that, there's a ton of things available for you. So those are things that I think most students forget about or think that there's just not money available for it. However, there's lots of foundations out there that want to support students who have come from various backgrounds. So I encourage you to think about some of those things and base your searches off of that as well. Okay. I talked a little bit previously about how you're going to get this money, right? And a lot of them is related to the essays. But when you're in a funk and just kind of writing, sometimes those essays can get a little boring. And so we put together just some tips that we feel like are really helpful from our perspective, because Emily and I read a lot of essays. And so we put these couple of hints together for you. Again, you don't have to follow every single thing, but when you're writing essays, a lot of times our recommendation is keep 2 to 3 personal essays in your back pocket, and you can utilize those essays for multiple scholarships. So just make sure that when you are writing, right, that you are keeping it somewhat more specific stories, but sometimes it's good to have a couple of general essays. That way you can power through and submit them to as many scholarship opportunities as possible. So tip number 1, plan ahead. In terms of like when is a good time to apply, anytime. However, right now is the big scholarship season. So depending on where you're applying to for these different scholarships, you're going to want to time some of these things out. At this point in time in your senior year, you should have already started applying to actual colleges. Right now is the time that you're really thinking about the financial aid piece and thinking about making final decisions if you have not already made a final decision. So when I say plan ahead, I say look at those deadlines for all of these specialty scholarships. Simpson's, for example, is February 1st for all of our specialty scholarships. A lot of other schools are pretty similar on that. For any private money, typically I see the range being from December through the spring. Sometimes there's occasional ones available in the fall, but I would say for the most part, December through April is the big season for any of those private funds, because most students commit or have committed by May 1st. And that's kind of the generic deadline that we see most often. Number 2, be unique. This is really hard, I think, for a lot of students, because we are really inherently conditioned to not brag about ourselves and to, blend in. This is the one time I urge you to not do that. I will urge you to really embrace the weird, because that's going to set you apart from any other person that is applying for these scholarships. And think about it. There are probably hundreds or thousands of kids applying for scholarships depending on where you're applying. If you're applying to a national scholarship, very much expect that there's going to be thousands of people applying for those scholarships. If you're applying to something locally, it's probably going to be in a few dozen students, but still you want to make yourself stand out. So think about what makes you unique. And that can be a hard question to answer. So what I would recommend that you do is talk to your friends. And super weird, but honestly, just ask them, like, what do they like about you? Like, what makes you you? Why do you like being my friend? Why do you like hanging out with me? What makes me awesome? Because they're going to give you an honest answer. They're your friends. So that's going to be really helpful for you to kind of do some self-awareness, self-actualization, and understand what makes you you. And some of us have more self-awareness than others, but I highly encourage you to just kind of think about some of those things. Emily and I see this a lot, the generic essay where maybe you forget to remove a different school's name. That happens sometimes, or you've submitted again, like the same essay to everybody. Think about unique experiences that you've had in your life. Not every admissions counselor wants to read about the big game. We might want to read about just some other stuff. So think about things outside of school and outside of athletics that make you you. I think the more that you can be personal and vulnerable and share about yourself, the better that you will be. Number 3, try or do not try at all. It is absolutely obvious when someone has just not made the effort in an essay. You didn't spell check anything. Like there's just all sorts of errors. Again, like you left a different school's name in there and you're applying to Simpson College and the essay says something else. It just is sort of a turnoff for admissions professionals to see that, okay, well, I'm supposed to be giving you money, but it doesn't look like you put a whole lot of effort into this. So if you aren't going to take the time and really work through what you're doing, it's probably better that you just don't do it at all, because it's not a good look. Review and revise with multiple eyes. This is so important, because if you're like me and you get writer's block sometimes and you look at something that you've written over and over and over again, you're never going to see the mistakes. So I highly encourage you to have a parent or if you have a trusted professor or a friend that can review these essays for you, that's going to be really helpful. Also, messaging is really important. So if you're writing something and, I don't know, when I write something, I think everything I write is great. But someone else might not think that. And so it's really helpful to have a friend or someone else look it over and say, the tone of this is a little weird. What if you try this? It's really helpful to have multiple people check it out, which is why it's really important to plan ahead, because it's really hard to have someone look it over when the deadline is tomorrow and you're doing the essay tonight. So again, plan ahead, know when you've got to get some stuff done, and be organized. When you are organized, track what you're doing with these essays. So utilize an Excel sheet or a Google Doc and make sure that you're keeping track of all the deadlines. Give yourself a task list. Make sure you're checking in with yourself kind of on like a weekly basis, if not more frequently, to figure out, okay, I need to submit essay X, Y, and Z before February 1st, or, okay, now I've submitted these essays. I need to follow up with those people in 2 weeks, whatever it might be. Just make sure that you have some sort of tracking tool to make sure that you're keeping yourself together, and that you have set up alerts on your phone. Everyone's on their phone. So just make sure you set up like little alerts, alarms for yourself, alerts on your calendar to check in on these things. Communicate with counselors. Nothing is worse for me and Emily than when you don't return our texts or our phone calls. And I realize that probably a lot of people are communicating with you, and I totally get that. But if you want to go to a particular school, you definitely want to communicate with the admissions counselors at that school, because we are your biggest advocates. We are the ones that are going to say, this person deserves this scholarship. They absolutely will fight for you. But we got to know you. We got to be able to know you if we're going to be able to vouch for you. So just make sure that you're communicating as much as in a reasonable amount, right? You don't need to respond to every single thing, although we would love that. But please just be communicative. And I'll just say this as a disclaimer: if you know that you're no longer interested in a particular school, let them know, because then they'll stop calling you. And it won't be a bother for you. It won't be a bother for them. It's not rude for you to say that. Just, again, open communication is key. Number 7, follow up. So I kind of already mentioned this already, but if you have applied for specific scholarships, maybe in 2 to 3 weeks after you've applied, follow up with either the admissions counselor of that school, if it's through an institution, or follow up with the actual institution entity themselves. So if it's a nonprofit, typically there's a point of contact. On most applications, you will see the point of contact with an email and a phone number. So just keep track of that. Make sure you follow up with them. And a follow-up can be a very quick email. It doesn't have to be anything in depth. You can say, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I recently applied for one of your scholarships. I just wanted to follow up and see where you're at in the process. I really look forward to hearing from you. Have a great day. It does not need to be anything deeper than that. Like, they probably are getting tons of emails, so something quick and short is good. However, following up makes you memorable, because I'm going to remember that I got an email from this specific person when I'm reading through the essays. Oh yeah, that person emailed me. It's just a nice way to, again, get your name out there and continue to be in back of people's minds. The last thing too is give thanks. Always be thankful, because relationships are everything in this world, and you never know who you might run into in the future. Even if you don't end up attending a particular institution, you never want to leave a bad taste in people's mouths, because maybe in the future in your career, you might have to work with some of these people, or you might encounter them in another setting. So you always want to be super gracious, give thanks. When you do hear back from counselors or from other folks related to financial aid, a thank you goes a long way. Politeness is everything these days, especially when we live in today's world, where politeness sometimes is not always at the forefront of every conversation. Okay. I hate that we have to talk about this, but I want you all to be super safe and protected when you are going through this information. Scams. They are out there, and it really makes me sad that people want to take advantage of students, but sometimes, we can be a little naive. That's okay. It's okay to admit that. But I just want to make sure that when you're looking for things, that you're not falling into any kind of financial traps, that you're not doing anything that you shouldn't. These are a couple things that we've seen. So if you encounter any kind of scholarship application, any search engine, any app on your phone related to scholarships, and it has some of these things. If it says like guaranteed or your money back, you're not going to be able to get this information anywhere else. If it asks for a credit card or a bank account to hold your scholarship, basically anything that involves you giving money in order to get money, that is a scam. So just kind of be aware of your surroundings. We live in a day and age, right, where things are super accessible because of the internet, and therefore so is your personal information, and not just your own personal information, but your parents' personal information too. And as someone who knows several people who have had identity theft happen to them, it is really hard to recover from identity theft. So please be smart. If you pop into something and it's asking you for any kind of personal information, and you're not getting an explanation from a real live person as to why you need to give that information, bounce, get out of there ASAP. You do not need to, that's not something that's for you. It's more than likely a scam. So again, just want to make you aware of some of these things because sadly they do exist. And we want you to be smart. Okay. Lastly, I'm going to turn things over to Emily just to kind of talk about some general resources for you because we just went over a whole ton of information. And we want to make sure that if you do have questions about a variety of things, that we've got the right resources for you. So I'm going to turn it over to Emily.
Okay, sorry, it took me a minute to unmute myself. So, all right. So just remember, there are, first and foremost, you're not in this alone, and there are plenty of people that have gone through all of this before. I know Maddie can attest to this, and I can attest to this as well. Staying up late nights, writing your essays, having your parents read them, all of that stuff we have definitely done. So not only are we your advocates, but also, people that are readily available to you. First and foremost, your high school guidance counselor. I know, depending on the size of the school that you went to, you could either be very close to your guidance counselor, or you probably only see them once once a semester, probably, right? But regardless, your guidance counselor is always going to be that first person that's really available to you to help you look over an essay or talk about an opportunity. But just make sure that you are reaching out to them, and also just to see what they know and how they can definitely help you network to capture some of that money that is out there for scholarships. Some more public areas are going to be like a college financial aid office. So with all of you being admitted at Simpson and the majority of you having your FAFSA already filled out, we do have a team of really awesome professionals that are here to help you. So if you have a question, if you want us to do some comparisons with other offers you may have gotten, you can definitely always reach out to our financial aid office, as well as the financial aid offices of other colleges that you might be looking at. Specific to Iowa students, we have the Iowa College Student Aid Commission and also the Iowa College Access Network. These are other places that you can look not only for scholarship opportunities, but for quick tips, tricks, and also, what are some of the best ways to capitalize on securing the bag and making sure that you're maximizing all of your scholarship opportunities. Not to mention, they also do have different courses on writing the perfect essay to, going in for an interview, because some scholarships will ask you to do things like that. So those are all some really awesome resources that you can definitely utilize. For students that are not from Iowa, I can guarantee your state has something similar. You can either go to your high school counselor, or you can actually talk to your Simpson counselor for that additional help, and we can definitely help you with those things. As for the Simpson Contacts, this is all of our contact information from our financial aid office, myself and Maddie. Luckily, me and Maddie actually sit right across the hall from one another. So if I don't have an answer, she has one, and vice versa. And also, our general office of admissions can definitely help you out as well. We have some really awesome people that know a lot about a lot of different things. And kind of like what Maddie has already said, we do get a little sad when you guys don't text us back. We understand you're busy, but we want to help you and we want to be advocates for you. Usually around this time, I know for myself, I'm reading anywhere from 10 to 15 essays a week from students that I'm working with. And it's probably one of the more rewarding parts of our job, as opposed to it will, in addition to, you guys telling us that you've committed to Simpson, as well as seeing you guys walk around campus as Simpson students. So make sure that you're definitely leveraging us, because we're your advocates. We're here for you, and we want to make sure that, again, the Simpson experience is an affordable one.
We have just done a huge knowledge dump on you, and we want to make sure that we can help you with any kind of questions that you might have, whether it's related to the content we just covered or related to something that maybe we didn't cover. We are opening it up for Q&A.
Yep. So we did have one, actually, and it's specific to students that are going to be transferring into Simpson. Can you specify if, oh, wait a minute. The websites that you mentioned, are there scholarship opportunities for transfer students?
Yes. So you will definitely see on all the search engines that I labeled, there are options. Most of the private stuff does not discern between first year and transfer. Most of the things that are applicable to transfer students tend to be college or university specific. So those apps and those websites that I talked about, you can apply for all of those. If there are any requirements, it will be on the actual application itself. So you will see something that says this is for first year students only. And there should be ways as well that you can narrow down your search in that search engine to focus on solely transfer. I would make sure that you have several different search engines available. So if you're going to search for something just for transfers, make sure that's not your only search on that website, because I don't want you to miss out on something that isn't specifically flagged for transfers. Because I would say a majority of the ones I've seen on there, are applicable to all students. So no issues there.
Awesome. Another question comes from Gabriel. What about using FastWeb to search for scholarships?
Yep, that's another reputable source. Again, there are tons of them available and out there. I will say, I think just check with FastWeb. I know at one point they did have different levels. So there's a free one, and then there's, you can get access to more scholarships if you pay for the subscription. It's up to you. So just kind of depends, but I would say, there's a lot of search engines available. Just make sure that you're using something that's right for you. The ones that we labeled on here were the ones that we really feel are trusted and that we prefer just based on their user-friendly abilities. But FastWeb is a common one that we see often. So there's nothing wrong with it.
Yep. All right. So this next one, I will go ahead and say it, and then I'll answer it. So it says, so when you say you are texting and emailing students, what accounts or phone numbers are you looking for to contact you? So basically what that means is, at some point during the year, you've probably received a text message from a 515 number saying, this is Maddie, or this is Emily, or this is Dave, or this is Mark. And we're basically telling you that we're your admissions counselor, and that, we need your high school transcript, or, we need your FAFSA, or congratulations on getting in, I'm sending you an email, and all of those great things. So when we say that, sometimes, students don't get back to us, it's not because you guys don't want to. 10 out of 10 times, it's just because you're doing so much that, you don't have the time. We only ask that, you just keep our phone numbers and you utilize us as a resource when you need us, basically. I've had students to where, I have tried to contact them from September all the way up until December. And then actually this past New Year's, so yeah, I guess a couple weeks ago, I had a student call me at 9:00 in the morning on New Year's Eve and wanted to talk about scholarships in their application. So, definitely, try and leverage us whenever you can. Sometimes, if you can, just shoot us a text back, just let us know that you got it. And that, you guys don't have any questions or anything like that, and we'll still try and get in contact with you guys. So, Maddie, did you have anything to add to that, or do you want the next question?
No, I think you all made really good points. I think the other aspect of just being in contact with us is that if something happens, right, in emergency cases, letting us know about those different things is really important too, because we've had in the past students where, there's unfortunately been a death in the family, or, just something has happened, unexpected. Life happens. You're never going to predict what's going to happen tomorrow. However, If you feel that there's something, happening where it's a situation that would maybe impact your financial situation, or even just like your well-being, let us know. That way we can support you the best way, that we can. And that's regardless of, if you're coming to Simpson or not. Emily and I both want, what's best for all of you. So that's a good reason to kind of have that relationship with your admissions counselor, is just they're going to be able, again, to help you in those kinds of situations. And there might be resources available to you that you didn't even realize were possible. Like Simpson has special circumstances, for example, especially in a year like COVID, where it's had such a vast impact on families and their incomes. There's a lot of special circumstance things that could help you with some either loan forgiveness or in lowering your tuition cost. So just be sure that you're keeping us in the loop and making sure that we know what's going on with you.
Absolutely. All right. So the next question is from Corbin. For Simpson Music Audition scholarships, are those due by February 1st as well?
I think for music, I think in general, yes. I know in the past that they have made, exceptions. Yeah. I mean, it's, so in general, I think they would like to get all of their auditions and things done by the deadline. And I think everything is labeled as February 1st. However, again, if something comes up and you can't get the audition in the next 2 weeks, we'll make accommodations for you. We're never going to be like, no, well, you missed that date, so too bad for you. Yeah. It's just really to make sure we're keeping ourselves organized as a college. Again, but if it's been several months, you're reaching out to us in April and saying, hey, I want to apply for this, you may have missed the boat on that one. So, within reason, for sure. Try to get it in by the deadline, obviously, but we can help you figure some things out if you need it.
Yeah, and Corbin, we will also have your counselor reach out to you for some more information about that. So I went ahead and I made a note for you. And then the last question that we have so far is from Gracie. How many scholarships do you recommend doing per week? I would say, okay, first and foremost, make sure that you have a good handle on your schedule. We don't want you to burn out. Okay. So I would say, especially now that, you guys are getting back in school and some of you guys are virtual and some of you guys are hybrid and all of those great things, make sure that, you have a good bead on your schoolwork, extracurriculars and things like that. And then really decide how many scholarships you want to work on. I would say, just to keep it light and keep it cute, probably 2 a week. And that's just making sure that you're putting forth your best effort on those 2 scholarships. If you're doing 5 and 6 a week, I would say that, you do kind of have a higher factor of getting burnout. I think doing 2 a week and making sure that not only are your essays on point, your recommendations are good and everything like that, but also that you're putting your best foot forward and that's showing through that essay or that interview that you're doing at that time. What do you think, Maddie?
Yeah, I think it's a personal preference, right? Like, some of us are really huge go-getters and are, willing to just really knock a ton of stuff out. And some of us are super busy and there's other stuff going on. And so you need a more manageable number. There's no right or wrong answer to how many you should be doing. It is, again, your own personal preference and knowing your boundaries and limits. However, I would say a good practice is to get yourself in a schedule. So maybe on like a Saturday or a Sunday, every Saturday or Sunday, pick a day, set aside 2 hours for yourself where every single day on that day. So if you pick Sundays, for example, from noon to 2, every Sunday from noon to 2, that's your dedicated time to work on these scholarships and different things. That will kind of help you manage it a little bit more. Again, you can check in with yourself more often than not, but as long as you have kind of a set date with yourself, that's always really helpful to kind of keep things together as well. I had a question asked just to me, but I think it's really relevant to everybody. So I had someone ask, how much can coaches, if you're an athlete, help you to get more financial aid? And this is a super great question. It can be complex depending on the institution. I would say, again, the more relationships you have with a particular college, the better, because the coaches are going to be an advocate for you as well. However, coaches do not have a final say or dictate the financial aid. The financial aid department are the people that get to decide yes, we're going to be able to give them more money or not. But if you are working with a particular coach, obviously communicating with them is going to be really helpful for you. Just like Emily and I said, hey, it'd be great if you would communicate with us, with your counselors. The same can be said for coaches. I will say that Simpson College, for example, because of our conference, we do not give out or award any athletic scholarships. That is not the same for every college. It depends on the league that you're in and the conference that you're in. So some colleges are able to award students based on their athletic performance. Simpson is not, and those are rules that we do not control. So that's not something you have to necessarily worry about with us. However, coaches can always advocate for you, and we're always in communications pretty much on a daily basis. So, okay, great question. So someone asked, if by chance you earn more in scholarships than you need for 1 year, can it be applied towards your total for the next year? That would be amazing if you got more scholarships and did not have tuition for the year. Preach, proud of you if that's what applies to you. It will depend on the specific donor, like where you're getting the money from, because some applications say it has to be used within the specific school year. So I can't give you a general answer on that because it is really specific based on who you're getting the money from. I would say if there are specific scholarships where they don't have a limit, maybe you want to utilize that for living expenses or for, something else. So I don't necessarily think you can roll it over to the next tuition year. And I will say most scholarships that are private are annual. So you have to reapply every single year. Whereas like if you get money from an institution, that tends to happen. You tend to get that scholarship all 4 years. So like Simpson, that's kind of how our programming is with any of our specialty scholarships. If you are involved in that program all 4 years, you're going to have that scholarship all 4 years. Whereas the private scholarships, you have to apply every single year. So that's kind of the catch-22 with the private scholarships, is it's a little bit more work, but it's worth it to not have debt. So I actually appreciate you for asking that question because it's really great. I think a lot of people don't think about that. So I think my general answer is probably no. I don't think you'd be able to roll it over, but again, check with the specifics on the requirements for those scholarships, because they definitely will have fine print that will tell you what you can and cannot use it for. Good question.
Yep. All right. I do not have any more questions in the chat.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in tonight. We really appreciate you engaging with us, and hopefully this was really helpful for you. Again, stay connected with us. We're going to have some more sessions throughout the end of this year, and we're really looking forward to seeing you all join us on campus next year and being a part of the Storm family. As always, you can chat with Emily and I anytime. We've got our contact info right here, so feel free to reach out to us, and we are happy to chat and help you any way we can. Night, everybody.
All right. Good night, guys. Have a great one. Thank you.